Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the Hennessey Venom is a really rather incredible car. It has an awful lot of power. It's incredibly fast in a straight line, phenomenally fast, accelerating as well. And in all honesty, it's not quite as hard to drive as you might expect a 1,200 horsepower rear-wheel drive car to be. The brakes are actually pretty good, and you get, decent cornering grip from the car. Sure, it is not an easy car to drive. Making mistakes is incredibly easy with a vehicle that has this much acceleration, this much straight line speed, because you're a fraction too late on the brakes, fraction too early on the power. You will have a humongous accident. And thus, racing these cars, with a field of 20 or so of them, is often going to end in disaster. However, what happens if you restrict the power? These cars, using the power handicap in the multiplayer race settings, restricted these cars at the maximum setting meant that they had just 200 horsepower. They still have phenomenal brakes and a huge amount of grip, but only 200 horsepower, which we figured would make for some interesting racing. Now, the start of this opening race was a little bit bumpy because no one quite knew what to do under brakes. A few of us, a bit like me, were not quite expecting the brakes to be as good as they actually were, so we braked a tad early, and a few of the people got it right. A few people may have braked a little too late. And the upshot of it was there was a bit of bumping into turn 1 and then through turn 2. 4 cars into one piece of road doesn't quite fit, and a yellow car got turned around. But on the whole, it was a little bit, but I think maybe one car got damaged in that opening bit. On the most part, everybody made it through with just some scrapes on the paintwork. But yeah, it was certainly a kind of a weird experience almost into that first braking zone. And I was finding myself in a similar issue. I tried to get my car stopped to do a cutback on the vehicle ahead, but braked far too much. Ended up slowing the cars down behind me. I do apologise on that one, because the brakes were just so much better than you were expecting. And another thing you were finding is that you can be flat out of these corners, and your brain was telling you you're a moron, you're in a Venom, you can't do it, but of course there's far less power in this car, so you could get away with a lot of things, and it was just take a lap or two to kind of fully get the hang of the way that these cars drove. We're now going 3 wide in Venoms down the corkscrew, and you wouldn't do that normally with these cars, but they made it fit, just about. There may have been a car on the sand, but yeah, as you can see in this opening lap, even with us not quite knowing what to expect from the vehicles, things were incredibly close. Now, you could get these cars to oversteer. It wasn't on power oversteer. There wasn't enough power to actually spin up the huge rear tyres in these, but I guess the way the car is set up, when pushed really hard, you could get a little bit of oversteer, but on the whole, pretty damn nice cars to drive. Also, if you could get on the curbs, could cause issues. We see the black and green car here just running a little too deep into the final corner. That puts him in trouble as we come down this start-finish straight. The blue car is up the inside into turn 1, which is where you want to be. The green car thinks about trying to go around the outside, changes his mind when he realises he has the grip, goes to the inside. Now, one thing that we did see a little bit at the start of this race is quite a few cars were ending up on the sand. It's not deliberately doing it, it's just people were not quite expecting the amount of grip. Just trying to go for the cutback on that first corner, not expecting the cars to change direction and have the amount of grip that they do, because they have an awful lot of grip. I was continuing to fight my way through the field. These cars really suited my driving style. I was going really rather quickly with these. I was putting pressure on a purple Venom. Thought about having a go at the inside. This is a tough corner to do an overtake on, though. Very, very fast corner in these. Your best bet is this final turn. There was enough of a gap. I reckoned I was good enough under brakes. I got my car up the inside, forgot about the long gear ratios, and promptly put myself into reverse. And that's not a good place to be in reverse. Yeah, these cars, they still have the same gearbox that they had when they got 1,200 horsepower, so the gears are pretty damn long. And in the heat of battle, momentarily forgot and dumped the car into reverse around the final corner. Not my finest driving moment, I will be honest. This was a group of cars that went past me while I was pointing the wrong way. They were having an almighty tussle over what I think was about 6th and 7th place, something like that, for this group of cars. It was an awful lot of side-by-side fighting. One thing we did see with these, much like when we raced with the Fiats and so on, or when you race with any relatively low-powered cars, momentum is very, very important in these. It's really important to keep your momentum up. There's a little bit, I'm not sure, there's a little bit of lag on the replay, a little bit of a strange crash for these cars that end up kind of all getting tangled up, and then they're 3 wide, going up towards the top of the hill. This is not a good place to be going 3 wide, that is for sure. In the end, the green car can just get a little bit ahead as they turn in. The car we were following the yellow and black one, got sort of stuck on the outside. And again, you see that making a little mistake is incredibly costly in these cars because you lose that momentum and it's very hard to gain the speed again. Long gears and not a huge amount of power. And the blue car gets sideways coming down the corkscrew. He loses a huge amount of time or a huge amount of space to the cars ahead. The yellow and black car is right back behind him. I'm recovering from my spin, caught these guys incredibly quickly as the blue car gets very, very sideways. I decide, right, I'm following the yellow and black car up the inside. He then understeers wide, and I get two cars in one corner, which is always nice when you can do an opportunistic overtake like that. I defend, make sure I can keep those positions into the final corner. He tries to go around the outside. It's a long way around there, and he can't quite make it stick with a bit of wheel on the dirt. I mean, when you're in exactly equal cars, getting overtakes around the outside is pretty damn difficult. At the front, there was an equally close battle going on. The white and black car had led early on. I think he made a bit of a mistake to drop himself back into the clutches of the blue Venom as they came up towards the corkscrew for the final time. Corkscrew tends to be a slightly more difficult overtaking opportunity, but in these cars, overtakings were happening pretty much wherever, as the white car just ran a little too deep under brakes, pushing, trying to defend his position. That gave the blue Venom an opportunity to do the cutback on the exit. He would get up to the inside. It's not all over yet, though. There's still one more good overtaking spot as they run through the next corner. They are incredibly close. Blue car hits a little bit of a bump. He's out wide on the dirt, a little bit slow off the corner, but goes very defensive into the final corner. There's just no space for the white car, and with wheels on the dirt, on the curb, can't get any momentum out of that final turn, and he would have to settle for second place. Blue car would take victory. You can see the top three in shots there. It was a rather weird experience, I have to say, driving these cars. But as you can see, the racing was really rather fantastic. And for me, well, as the laps were running out, I had one more car that I could overtake on this final lap, and I was determined to make the most of the opportunities. Because, yeah, I really liked these cars. I was doing really well, sort of speed-wise, with these, despite some silly mistakes. So, yeah, the car ahead of me got it sideways across the curb. I tried to get to the inside, but as he sort of tried to recover it, we ended up sort of bumping a little bit. No real harm done. I've got the hang of the brakes, managed to try the cutback out of the final turn. That little bump, though, had caused us issues, allowed the blue car behind to catch up, and then it's just a drag race towards the line, which I would win, and the yellow car would just hold off the blue vehicle. Oh, for those of you wondering why my car is silver, I forgot to paint my vehicle, so I had whatever I had in my garage, which I think is Damascus steel is actually what I have in my Venom. So yeah, that's why my car's a funny colour. Our second race would go to the Road Atlanta Club Circuit. I think there was one staller further back. It is quite easy to stall these cars with so little power and such long gears. If you got things a little bit wrong at the start, it was possible to stall them. Now, Road Atlanta tends to be a pretty fast corner here. We have seen a few accidents, a few offs in Versus Community and other races we've done here. Everybody made it through absolutely fine. Even everyone managed to avoid the stall. Everybody made it through turn one absolutely fine. Then we come up the top of the hill here. This is a really fast corner, and we're too wide nose to tail through here. You couldn't do this. To be fair, you struggle to do this with normal cars at the best of times. With the standard Venom, essentially, you'd have been in all sorts of trouble, or more than likely in all sorts of trouble. It's three wide as I get caught on the inside, going around this long sweeping corner, and yeah, I mean, it just ended up running out of space between all of the cars. There was, the odd little bit of bumping, but on the most part, because these cars were now so much more controllable, it was much easier to catch it, much easier to sort it out, and easier to sort of attack and defend and so on, which we found out as we run into the chicane. It's almost too wide. Most of the cars were fighting too wide, and if you weren't too wide, it's just this solid train of vehicles as we come up towards this final corner. It was a really rather spectacular sight. I don't think I've ever seen a start to a race with so many cars just in kind of one long train stretched out around the track. The leader, though, was coming under increasing pressure. And we would quickly see that you can't really afford to get yourself out of position. So as he was getting overtaken, he ended up taking a slightly wonky line on the way down the hill. That's already allowed, I think, 3 cars past. Now a 4th car is trying to get to the inside as well, just because he was out of position through one turn. That slowed him down through that turn, and it's put him in all sorts of trouble. You just couldn't afford to make mistakes. Again, at the chicane, he gets a little bit squeezed out, just kind of runs out of road down there. 5 positions lost simply from being out of place on a slightly different line on the run down the hill. yeah, you had to be, when you were getting overtaken almost, you had to be quite careful not to end up letting the whole train of cars come past. You may have seen in the background, I got sort of stuck under the wing of a car ahead of me, couldn't quite see where I was going through the long corner, ended up off on the grass, so I had yet another recovery drive to do, was fighting with a green Venom, did the brave and slightly crazy manoeuvre around the outside at the top of the hill. That is one of the hardest places to overtake a car around there. It's a ridiculous corner to try and get overtakes done. You can see in the background they're going too wide down the hill because it's such a fast corner with these vehicles. You are not quite flat out. It's a tiny dab on the brakes, tiny lift even perhaps if you're really, really brave to get the cars through there. Up ahead, the leaders are having a squabble. There's a solid train of cars ahead of me. I'm up the inside of another vehicle as we come into the chicane. It was just a lot of fantastically close racing. A little bit later on, the field did spread out, a little bit more, as is to be expected, as cars, got marred down in battles and so on. But it was very much a case, like all of the best racing that we've done, I could point the camera at almost whatever position and there would be cars around. Okay, you might not be quite on, attacking and defending constantly, but you would always have somebody ahead of you or somebody behind you to worry about. There's a change to second place up ahead. These cars are going, 4 cars into a very, very small piece of tarmac into the chicane, and by now, of course, everyone had kind of got the hang of the handling, got the hang of the brakes of these cars, so you had a lot of confidence to race incredibly closely with one another. These were remarkably forgiving vehicles to drive now that they had so much less power. As we round the final corner, the green car right underneath the wing of the car ahead goes to the outside for turn 1. The outside, though, is not really where you want to be for this first corner. It's the tiniest of tags as they run through turn 1, but it's enough to slow the green car down, and we saw about how important the momentum is to keep up. That slows him down up the hill, that lets a car around the outside, and he had a little lift to make sure there was space for them to get through, and now he's in trouble from the other yellow car that gives him a little bit of a hurry-up bump. Just kind of ran out of road to do too much about him there. Keeping that momentum up was again critical, especially when you're dealing with the hills and so on of this particular track. At the front, we see a familiar story almost. When we race these, very, very equal cars in these one-make races, if you can get to the front early on, if you can pull that little bit of a gap and have the other cars fighting for position, you can run in clean air, you can, just kind of escape the chaos, ignore the slightly lagged out car going on there. And that's what this black Venom managed to do. Got to the lead early on, and while the rest of us squabbled, could pull a little bit of a gap back to the rest of the hill, but there was no huge margins of victory in these races. For me, I was, after my little bit of rallycross, I was determined to get myself on the podium, and I'd have another incredible final lap. I was ranging up on the back of these cars. I think I got fastest lap in this race as well. Ranging up on the back of the cars ahead. I really like these vehicles. Had to go at the inside into the chicane, but couldn't quite get my car far enough alongside. I spot my opportunity, though, as the white Venom gets a slide out of the chicane. That means I can out-drag him up the hill, get to the inside for the final turn. He's not going to give up, though. He tries to keep it around the outside. I'm across the grass and pretty much slide my car across in front of the white Venom to take the final spot on the podium. Yeah, it was a pretty damn good race at Road Atlanta, gotta say. An awful lot of close racing, that one. For our final race, we would go to Long Beach. Long Beach is always an interesting track to run in any of these races. I love the circuit. It's a fantastic track, but it often doesn't produce the best of racing because it's quite a difficult circuit to get right. Overtaking is very tough around here when the walls are so very, very close. As we run into turn 1 again, there was a little bit of bumping here and there, but on the most part it was incredibly clean through that first corner. There was no major accidents. A few cars unfortunately got themselves caught up on the roundabout. Somebody did get turned around because you'd have a wheel on the curb on the roundabout and it'd just stop your car, and then the cars behind would end up into the back of you. So roundabout was a little bit of a pain. Bigger incident though, tyre bundle on the outside of this corner. One of the leaders hit the tyre bundle that made a big mess. That took out a fair few cars, unfortunately. It's an easy mistake to make with these cars. You just end up in the tyre bundles, and the tyre bundles stop your car instantly and fling it back across the track. So yeah, a little bit of a shame. There's a much higher rate of attrition in this race, but that is the nature of Long Beach. The cars that did survive, though, we were all still racing really rather closely as we came down this back straight. Again, it's all nose to tail and too wide into this corner. The Black Venom managing to make up a position, but the car we're following does the cutback. Yes, he's stuck on the outside around here, but it puts you on the inside for the hairpin. The hairpin was actually a part that we were slightly concerned about with these Venoms having such long gears and little power. Getting the cars out of the hairpin was really rather important. We saw the yellow Venom couldn't quite make the move stick on the black car. The black car actually got a really, really good run out of the hairpin, as did I. As we were coming down this start-finish straight, I was looking at trying to get a move done on the blue car. I could get myself alongside, but a blue car in the slipstream of the car ahead was keeping himself there as we went under brakes into turn one. Blue car was brave to try and hold it around the outside. I have to give him space as we run up towards the roundabout. Now I'm the one stuck on the outside. Fortunately for me, blue car just clips the curb on the roundabout, slows himself enough so that I can get my car across in front, and now we've got another car joining in. I actually got a massive slide on through the next corner, tagged the wall, slowed the blue car down ever so slightly, and yeah, now there was all manner of cars close together fighting for position. This was at the front. The red car had actually got a little bit of a gap to the rest of the field, made a mistake. That dropped him right back into this four-way battle for the lead at Long Beach, and the whole field was pretty close together, much like we saw at Road Atlanta. The two, there's got a lot of cars all running wide through that wall. The two yellow Venoms fighting over second place. I think one of them got knocked across the, people weren't deliberately cutting the corners. One of them, I think they got contact going into that and pretty much got bumped across. The car we're following has a dive up the inside. I mean, this is all helping the red car escape. The second you start fighting like this, you can see the size of the gap he's got in just half a lap. The purple car makes the most of the situation, gets through the middle of these two as they squabble. The car we're following stuck on the outside, can't quite get the cutback, and now he's under all sorts of pressure as the rest of the field is coming to join in. I'm going to go up through the middle as well as we come down this back straight. I mean, we're almost looking at 3 wide and 2 wide into this next corner. I'm up the inside of the purple car. I got such a good run down that back straight. I couldn't quite make it stick, and now we're still fighting almost solidly 2 wide through this next corner. Car we're following gets a big slide across the curve. Unfortunately, disaster will inevitably strike. I got punted into the tyre bundles at the hairpin. That then slowed the car down that we were following massively on the exit. Yeah, I mean, there were the odd bumps, the odd shunts, and a few cars did end up getting broken and have to take a trip through the pit lane. The cars that survived, though, we were having a lot of fun. We were having a lot of fun racing. Me getting myself to the inside of the green Venom. I'm not sure if he locked his wheels slightly as the car in the background gets things very wrong through that corner. Yeah, it's actually a peculiar place to get the car sideways. You could get them sideways, if you chuck them into a corner too hard, but around here it was unlikely. And of course, on the curves, you could easily get them sideways. But yeah, that's a slightly peculiar place. It made the overtake for me relatively easy. I'd actually kind of got the hang of getting the cars out of the hairpin quickly, and that was very important to getting a good lap. Also made overtaking much easier. If you could get the cars fired out of that hairpin really, really quickly, then you could get a lovely run down this straight and get to the inside at turn 1, which is what I was going on going for on the yellow Venom here. And sure enough, could get myself up the inside. I can get across to cover, so he couldn't try and then fight me into the roundabout at the front, and it was the red Venom that was to go on to take victory. I would have liked to have fight with these guys at the front. Yeah, I just got involved in trouble in all of these races, really. Had a lot of speed in these cars. I love these things to drive. I just got myself in too much trouble. But yeah, the red Venom, after his early mistake, didn't make any more and could keep a relatively safe margin. I mean, you can see the rest of the field behind. As I said, there was no massive margins between the vehicles, which is, is always what you want to see in these racing. Yeah, as the race progressed, a few people made mistakes, and as I said, broke their cars, had to take through the pit. I think only about 9-10 cars finished without having to take a trip through the pit lane. But still on the final lap, these cars were squabbling incredibly hard over these positions. The black car got to the inside at the hairpin, but was slow off the corner. I'm not sure, it may have had a little bit of damage. The yellow car tried his best, but couldn't. There just wasn't enough straight to do anything about it, and would be unable to get past. So, 200 horsepower Venom racing is, I would say, a massive success. Yes, I know it sounds rather weird on paper, and certainly for that first race is one of the most bizarre things I've ever done on Forza, because your brain is telling you the expectations of the car, what you could do with it, and because it's all different, it doesn't drive at all how you expect. It's a very bizarre, very weird thing to kind of learn to get used to, but once you have, because the cars have so much grip, the brakes are so phenomenal, and they're so forgiving in this kind of spec, if you like, the actual racing is fantastic. I mean, you saw the amount of side-by-side, the amount of cars close together in packs of vehicles. I really do highly recommend it. It is a huge amount of fun. So yeah, go have a go with it yourself. There's a lot of entertainments to be had by racing some low-powered Venoms. Anyway, that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.